Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I just have to say, when President Obama came into office in 2008, we were put into the worst recession since the Great Depression, not by Barack Obama, but by some of my colleagues on the other side who did rubber stamp George Bush's policies that put us into this kind of deep recession that we never had. That's where we had rubber stamping. And that's when, at the period of time, we was losing jobs. We were bleeding 700,000 jobs a month by that policy. And this president had to dig us out of that policy that put millions of Americans, caused the unemployment rate to go up. And so we are digging out. And clearly, if we reflect on where we were headed before Barack Obama was president and where we're headed now, everybody, even up here, and some of my Republican colleagues, especially on the Senate side, have to admit that we're starting to move and change in the right direction. Now, I don't want to put enough, because when I walked in this door, I thought when Reverend Cleaver was talking, he could have been talking about me. My family, public housing. Wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for someone giving us a left hand up. What makes America different is that we do try to give a hand up to those who need it. And you talk about right now, yes, I can tell you some who are still in public housing. Some of my friends, parents, are still in public housing. They sacrificed everything for their child so that their child could get an education and get a job. And some of them, making and becoming part of the middle class and the lower middle class, but earning a living so that they're not, but their parents are there. And so we should just let them, kick them out and say their parents shouldn't be there. It's a hand up. It makes a difference in the lives of many who could contribute much to America. Because I believe sometimes if we don't give that hand up, if we don't help, we don't know what we're losing. It's the values, and I think when you look and I compare, I travel a lot. I get teased about traveling, but I think it's important because when I travel a lot, I look at the difference between how other governments treat their less fortunate, treat their poor, as opposed to what we do. And I think that's what makes America great. That's why I do believe that we've become, and we've made mistakes. I mean, we criticize a lot of countries, et cetera, but without sometimes acknowledging the same mistakes that we did, because we've had, especially with folks of color, gerrymandering and redlining and all of this, and Jim Crow, but we've overcome all of that, still got ways to go, because we are striving to be a more perfect nation. So we shouldn't roll back to where we were. We should look forward and say, okay, we're a greater country as a result of it. So I'm going to yield 2 minutes to Mr. Green because I know he was asking me for some time, and so I have to give him some time because he wanted to reply to someone over there.
Thank you, Mr. Meeks. I greatly appreciate your yielding. In the final analysis, dear friends, the greatness of a nation will not be measured by how we treat people in the sweets of life. It will be measured by how we treat people who live in the streets of life. How do you treat the least, the last, and the lost? And in this country, we have been very generous to people who live in the sweets of life. And we spend a lot of time on this committee trying to help people who live in the sweets of life. The man who made $3 billion one year. For edification purposes, that's $400 a second. For additional edification purposes, it would take a minimum wage worker at $7.25 an hour, 198,000 years to make what he made in 1 year. And we want to give him more tax breaks. We want to make sure that he can make more money. And I support his having made the money. I do think he ought to pay a fair share of taxes, but I support making money. But we spend a lot of time helping the people in the sweets of life. But when it comes to the people who are living in the streets of life, the solution is to cut off the lifeline. The solution is to talk about hospitals and how persons go into hospitals and don't get any treatment. Well, the persons in the hospital getting some treatment may not be the cure for the disease, but getting some treatment, getting some help, we ought to do more, yes. But we ought not relegate ourselves to only those who live in the sweets of life. More people live in the streets than the sweets.